Now, shall we begin?
All right.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
This is going to be quite the ride.
And hello everybody, and welcome to the Movie Pit Podcast. I am your host, Christian, and of course this is where we talk about all of the latest breaking movie news that have come out throughout the week. Let's talk about the movie trailers that came out this week, and we talk about the movies that are out in theaters this weekend for all your viewing pleasures. This week is no different. We have quite a few movies coming out this weekend, and we got not a lot of trailers this week. Surprisingly, a very light week all around. Movie trailer wise, news wise, we got some big movie news items, but for the most part, it's kind of been really a light week this week. So, as opposed to last week, where I want to apologize up front, I apologize for there being no podcast last week. Time and just a bunch of other random stuff came up that kind of took my attention away from the podcast a little bit, so I apologize for that. I had everything ready. I had everything set, ready to go, had an outline, all my thoughts and everything, and just for whatever reason, just no, the podcast gods were against me last week, so I want to apologize for that. Before we even get started with this week's podcast, I want to pre-apologize for potentially there being no podcast next week. I got some things going on for next week, so I just want to pre-apologize in case there is no podcast next week. I may record something earlier than anticipated, so I just want to put it out there that there may be no podcast. If there is, it will come out relatively earlier than, of course, than usual. So, I just want to point that out. So, that's it. Let's get to the podcast this week. Like I mentioned, there was no podcast last week, but there were some big movie news items that I would love to talk about and just get my thoughts out there, and also inform you guys in case you want to know about them or just miss them or for whatever or what have you. So let's talk about some movie news items that came out last week. The first one is that James Wan is returning to the horror genre, which is pretty damn cool. Before he begins production on Aquaman 2, Wan will direct, write, and co-produce a new horror film that is also being labeled as a thriller. Later, it was then reported that it would be a hard R thriller, and it will use practical effects opposed to CGI, blue screen, and green screen. So James Wan's pulling out some old tricks of his, which seems really, really cool. Though, of course, there are no plot details on the movie. There's not even a title for it. But Wan is, it has been reported that this is an original idea from James Wan. And on top of that, Wan will be working once again with New Line Cinema, which has handled the distribution for the Conjuring movies, which of course James Wan has directed, and has produced horror films like Lights Out and The Curse of La Llorona. Wan has been a pretty busy man ever since, his career jump-started with Saw. He's pretty much been non-stop, and he's non-stop recently too. I'm pretty sure he's a household name by now. If not, then he should be. He's set to direct the pilot episode for Netflix's The Magic Order, which is based off a comic book of the same name. He's also writing and co-producing The Crooked Man, which is a spin-off of the character from The Conjuring 2. And despite reports that came out a couple weeks ago, he is not directing the pilot for the TV series I Know What You Did Last Summer for Amazon, but he is, of course, working on, again, Aquaman 2, and he is working on this. So, pretty cool. The last horror movie I should say he directed, was The Conjuring 2, which came out in 2016. Of course, that was after he did Furious 7, and of course he did Aquaman last year, or a couple years. Well, officially he directed it a couple years ago, but it came out last year. So, alright, let's move on to the next movie news item that came out last week, which was the long-gesturing new adaptation of Dungeons & Dragons is one step closer again to being on the big screen. Sources say that Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly are in discussions to direct the movie. Like I mentioned, a new movie has been in the works for quite some time. In 2015, Warner Brothers and New Line started developing a new movie with Ansel Elgort, having been in early talks. The studio then tried to get one out with director Chris McKay, who directed the Lego Batman movie. He was obviously attached to direct, but he left the project and he went off and went to do something else. And then the project kind of just sat there for a little bit, and then Warcraft came out, and apparently Warcraft's disappointing box office run, at least here in the States, I know was a huge hit everywhere else around the globe, let out a lot of the steam for a Dungeons and Dragons movie, despite them really kind of being two different things. Of course, then the lawsuit happened over rights issues. Warner Brothers kind of won that case, and then eventually Warner Brothers kind of let the rights go, and the rights went over to Paramount, which isn't gonna make the movie with Goldstein and Daly. Goldstein and Daly, of course, directed Game Nights that came out last year, which is very funny. If you have not watched it yet, highly recommend it. Of course, they wrote the scripts for Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man, I almost said Into the Spider-Verse, that they had nothing to do with that. Why am I blanking? Far From Home. Why did I blank on that? Anyway, they also recently dropped out of Warner Brothers and DC's The Flash over creative differences. We talked about that when that news item dropped. There was previously a Dungeons and Dragons movie back in 2000. I am not going to recommend you watch that because that movie was goddamn awful. Oh man, it was terrible. And I feel sorry for everyone involved in that movie. Do not watch it. There are bad movies where I'm like, you know what, maybe you should watch it so, have your own opinion and judgment on it. Maybe it's, been a while since someone's watched it, so maybe it's better than people think. No. Dungeons and Dragons is god-awful. I knew that way back in the day when I watched it. It's not good. Do not, under any circumstances, watch the 2000 Dungeons and Dragons movie. It doesn't matter that it has Jeremy Irons in it. Do not watch it. And Jeremy Irons has made it very clear that he did it for the paycheck. And I don't blame him, but there's a lot of other things to blame for that movie. So, yeah. Let's hope that one. I mean, the new Dungeons and Dragons movies cannot be as bad as that movie. And of course, Dungeons and Dragons becoming maybe a little bit more popular because of course, Stranger Things, which of course is a very big factor in the show, or was a very big factor in the show. All right, let's move on to the next movie news item that came out last week. Luca, I always mispronounce his last name, and I feel very bad about it because I like him as a director. I think the stuff he does is pretty good. But Luca, I'm gonna just butcher his last name. I apologize. Guadagnino, I think that's how you pronounce it. That's not how you pronounce it. I shouldn't even say that's not how you pronounce it. I don't know. The director of Call Me by Your Name, and of course the Suspiria movie that came out last year. He is in negotiations to direct and produce Warner Brothers' adaptation of the classic novel by William Golding, Lord of the Flies. Warner Brothers has been trying to get a movie off the ground for Lord of the Flies for a while. Most recently, they tried to get it off the ground in 2017 when they acquired the rights for the novel. And when it was first reported that they got the rights, they wanted to switch it up. They wanted to do a gender swap. First of all, for those that don't know about the original novel or unfamiliar with it or just never read it, it follows a group of boys who are stranded on a deserted island who descend into kind of this very weird social order. And it's not very weird, but it's a social order that you kind of would expect to happen. So that's kind of what the book was about. And originally, when it was reported back in 2017 that when Warner Brothers got the rights back, they wanted to do a gender swap and have the main characters be a group of girls instead of boys. However, that plan is now gone. It's scrapped. Now with the director attached, this new director or potentially attached, he wants to follow the group of boys like in the book. And the plan is I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name anymore, if he signs on, he is going to develop a story that stays true to the text, but with a contemporary ultra-kinetic feel. That was how they worded it in the report. That said, it's unclear when he will actually start filming it, because the movie does not have a writer, so I'm pretty sure they're on the search for one, or maybe they have a writer's room working on it right now. But he's currently actually in pre-production for an HBO miniseries titled We Are Who We Are, which is expected to start filming in May, and he is not expected to start filming anything until he is finished with that miniseries. So it may be a while before we hear anything again about Lord of the Flies. Either way, there has been previous Lord of the Flies movies made. There was one in the 90s that was actually released by Warner Brothers. And I believe it was directed by Henry Hook. I could be wrong about that. I thought I saw his name in one of the reports, so that's why I assumed that's what it was. But interesting. If you've never read Lord of the Flies, I do recommend you read it. It's a very interesting read. I have not read it in a while. I know when I read it, I was actually relatively young when I read it. But when I read it, I was like, this is kind of, for one, this is kind of messed up at one point. And if you read the book, you know what part I'm talking about. And it would have been very interesting to see how they would have done some of that stuff with a bunch of girls. But now they're doing it again with a bunch of boys. So still, should be interesting to kind of see how they approach that, especially with the director I cannot properly name. I'm just going to call him Luca, even though I'm not on a first name basis with the man. I don't even know him. So it should be interesting to kind of see how they approach that and do that for them. So, all right, let's move on to the last movie news item that I would have loved to talk about last week. But still actually in the news because Del Toro, of course, is promoting Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which comes out this weekend. So, they're kind of been questioning about it. So, still relatively new in the news this week. But Del Toro is getting back behind the camera, of course, after winning Best Director and Best Picture for The Shape of Water. Yes, he has not directed a movie since then. It is a adaptation of Nightmare Alley, which already has Bradley Cooper set to star. But now the cast may be getting a little bigger, because news kind of just spread like wildfire. There's a bunch of reports from different outlets saying who has joined the movie. So first, Toni Collette is poised to play the female lead opposite Bradley Cooper. She will likely be joined by Del Toro's Shape of Water star Richard Jenkins, and of course Del Toro's favorite and go-to actor Ron Perlman. Also William Dafoe and Mark, I'm going to mispronounce his last name too, Mark Povolini. He was in the movie Water for Elephants. That was kind of I should have looked up what other movies he was in, but that's the thing that everyone said he was in, so I'm just going to assume that everyone kind of knows who he is. Are also set to co-star in the movie. Then another report came out saying that Kate Blanchett and Rooney Mara are being eyed for key supporting roles, and that Michael Shannon, who was of course in Shape of Water as well, is also eyed for a small role, although scheduling may be a problem for those last three names that I just talked about. So the movie itself is based off William Lindsay Graham's novel of the same name, Nightmare Alley, and follows Stan, who joins a traveling carnival and unsuccessfully schemes to figure out the mind-reading act of Xena, her alcoholic husband Pete. But when Pete dies, Xena is forced to take on Stan as a partner, and he quickly proves more gifted than his predecessor. Ambitious to a fault, it's not long before Stan goes on his own to mixed results, and of course there are a bunch of other things that happen along the way. From the multiple reports, it looks like Collette will play Xena. Dafoe could be playing Pete, although they may possibly change the character from being her husband to her father. That's kind of how they're trying to establish that. And again, this is all if they all end up signing. Perlman will play Bruno, the carnival strongman. Mara will be playing Molly, a young woman who catches the eye of Stan. Blanchett will play Stan's psychologist, I should say, while Jenkins, Shannon, and Povolini's roles are unclear at the moment. Production is expected to start this fall, although there is no release date given just yet. But all that said, if they do start this fall, we should be hearing a lot more on the casting side of stuff. I will obviously keep my ear to the ground on that. By ear to the ground, I mean my eyes on the websites, because that's where I get my news. On top of that, like I mentioned, Del Toro is promoting Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. He added this little tidbit saying that the movie will be rated R and will not feature any supernatural elements, which of course Del Toro is known for. So he's going straight adaptation, straight psychological thriller, I guess. That's how, I mean, the movie's called Nightmare Alley, obviously. So we'll see how all that works out. I'm, for one, excited. Anything Del Toro is excited. Del Toro is one of those directors where if his name's on it anywhere, I'm just going to go watch it, because he is undoubtedly one of my favorites. And he got his star on the Walk of Fame this week, and he gave this very touching and amazing speech, which if you have not watched, I highly recommend you do. It is very, very good. Okay, so those are movie news items that came out last week that I just wanted to touch upon quickly. Let's move on to our next segment of the podcast, or technically our first segment of the podcast, Quickfire. So we only got 2 Quickfire movie news items. So the first Quickfire movie news item is the live-action origin story based on the 100 Dalmatians villain Cruella de Vil has found her goons. And I say goons, I don't know why I said it like that. Why did I say it? I don't know. A couple weeks ago, Paul Walter Hauser was cast in the movie, although at the time his role was unknown. By the way, Paul Walter Hauser from I, Tonya. He played the right-hand man to Sebastian Stan, the guy who says he planned everything. He was also in Black Klansman, kind of playing a very similar character. He's also, apparently, I have not actually watched it, which is something I've been meaning to watch. He's apparently also in Cobra Kai over on YouTube. So Paul Walter Hauser is a name that you should get to know very, very well, because he is going to be breaking out very soon, even more than he already is. So he was cast. We didn't know who he was cast or what role he was cast in until this week, because this week it was reported that Joel Fry, who was recently in Yesterday, he plays Rocky, the best friend to the main character. He was also in season 5 of Game of Thrones. He played I forgot his name, but I remember, I saw him. I know his face, but I can't remember his name. He was one of the advisors of where Daenerys was for most of season 5. Marine? Was she on Marine in season 5? I can't remember anymore. Anyway, but he has been cast, and he has been cast as Jasper. And in the original cartoon, Jasper was one of the 2 crooks, along with his partner in crime, Horace, who kidnapped the 101 Dalmatians for Cruella. So Hauser looks like he's going to be playing Horace, while Fry will be playing Jasper. Emma Stone, of course, is already attached. She will be playing Cruella in the movie. And Emma Thompson is also in the film, although her role has been kind of shrouded in mystery. There's rumors that she would be playing someone that inspires Cruella, but we don't know for a fact if that is truly the case. Either way, the movie will be coming out next year on December 23rd, so the movie will be start shooting soon. And Craig Gillespie, who directed I, Tonya, nice little reunion for him and Hauser, will be directing the film. So there you go. The next quickfire movie news item is that David Ayer, the director of Fury and Suicide Squad, is currently in negotiations to direct the true story film El-Alamein. I think that's how you pronounce. I could be wrong about that. I apologize. Which tells the story of a war in northern Africa as the British and German forces faced off in an attempt to seize power of the Suez Canal and the Middle East oil fields, and the bloody standoff took place in the town of, again, hopefully I'm pronouncing this right, El-Alamein. There's a lot more to the battle. The reports that I read kind of went into detail about it, but I don't want to get into it because I want you to do some research on your own. And just in case I actually talk about it in the film itself. It included tank warfare, which Ayer, of course, has some experience in since he directed Fury, which was all about tank warfare. But the battle and the victory, it was considered to be what turned the tide, to give you a little bit of a history lesson here, for the Western Desert Campaign in favor of the Allied forces back in the day. Production is expected to begin later this year, so we'll probably be hearing a little bit more about the movie sooner rather than later, to be honest. Because fall's coming up, guys. I don't know if you know this. It's coming up. It's already August. All right. Let's move on. Let's move on to trailer talk.
Coming soon to theaters.
So we got a couple trailers that I'm just gonna fly by and talk about, just because, mainly because I don't have too much to say about them. Obviously, this is where there's a little section of that. The first trailer is a million little pieces. Why was that so hard to say? It is directed by Sam Taylor Johnson, who directed one of the 50 Shades of Grey movies. I think she directed the first one. Second one, I forgot to put down which one she directed. But it is based off the best-selling quote-unquote memoir from James Frey. If you remember all of that, James Frey is the infamous man who made a memoir that was all a lie, and is one of the only books that Oprah, yes, that one, took off her recommended must-read list. So in case you don't remember, the story was an alcoholic and a drug addict, 23-year-old James, which would be played by Sam Taylor's husband, Aaron Taylor Johnson, has two options: treatment or death. After waking up on a plane with a smashed up face and no memory of the past few weeks, he heads to rehab, where he discovers much more than detox and therapy. As James endures the white-knuckle journey of mending his broken body, he heals his broken soul by connecting with other kindred spirits who also yearn and fight for a better life. The movie will also star Billy Bob Thornton, Odessa Young, Charlie Hunnam, Giovanni Ribisi, and Juliette Lewis. Million Little Pieces opens on December 6th. I don't know how to feel about this movie, considering that it's based off a book that was a total lie. So I don't know how it's going to be received. It has a pretty good cast, a decent cast anyway, so it should be interesting to kind of see how all this plays out. There was a new trailer for the Addams Family movie, which is directed by Conrad Verdon and Greg Tyrion, who directed Sausage Party. So there is that. The animation looks very interesting. I said this when the teaser came out, and of course it has the impressive voice cast of Oscar. I'm gonna have to take a deep breath on this one. Oscar Isaac, Charlize Theron, Chloe Grace Moretz, Finn Wolfhard, Nick Kroll, Martin Short, Elsie Fisher, Amy Garcia, Snoop Dogg of all people, Bette Midler, and Allison Janney. The Addams Family opens on October 11th. It looks like the movie will be taking the Addams Family to, New Jersey. Looks like they had to move to a new home, and they moved to New Jersey. So you have this very dark, atmospheric look to it, and then they move to like this bright, sunny colored area. So I don't know. It should be interesting. I think the animation is the thing that's going to be the very divisive thing for people who end up going watch this. I'm going to go watch it because I kind of like the Addams Family. So yeah, we'll see what happens there. So the Addams Family opens on October 11th. The next quick trailer we're going to talk about is Low Tide. I didn't know anything about this movie until I saw the trailer. So in Low Tide, Alan, Red, and Smitty spend summer on the Jersey Shore, roving the boardwalk and getting into trouble. And that trouble is stealing from other houses. But the discovery of gold, of good old-fashioned gold, yes, they found gold, sets the friends on an escalating course of suspicion and violence in this atmospheric thriller. That is how the description points it out. It looks pretty good. Jaden Martell is in there, the main kid from It. He's in here. He plays one of the kids. I think he plays Alan. And just the whole thing looks very interesting. A lot of sites were describing it kind of as this very atmospheric thriller version of Stand By Me, which it kind of does look like that, but you have any young kids in a movie, they're gonna instantly compare it to Stand By Me. But it looks pretty good. So hopefully this turns out, and it's by A24, who of course have a very good track record. So we'll have to see how that turns out. All right, so let's talk about the main trailers this week. I only got one, and that one is for Honey Boy. It is written by Shia LaBeouf. Yes, that one.
Just do it!
It is also a semi-autobiographical. Wow, that was a very hard word to say. Apparently, semi-autobiographical movie about his life and his father. The film follows Noah Jupe. He was the son in A Quiet Place as Otis Lort, aka Honey Boy, a child actor working on an unnamed TV show. Which, like I just said, the movie is pretty much a story of Shia LaBeouf's life. So this TV show is obviously Even Stevens, who lives with his father in a motel. Lucas Hedges from Manchester by the Sea He had a small role in Lady Bird. He plays a grown-up version of Otis, while LaBeouf will play his own father in the movie. He is an overbearing man and a former radio clown who is Otis's acting coach and abusive parent. So there's two trailers. There's a red band trailer and a green band trailer. I saw the red band trailer first, so that's the one that I'm gonna drop right here.
What am I being arrested for? What am I being arrested for, huh? You think you're fucking hot shit? Cause you don't know how good I am at what I do.
I see you. Concentrate real hard. Be a 12-year-old.
Pie fight. Ugh.
It's not a pie fight.
Think it through. What's your mother got a job for?
Just in case.
In case what?
I don't
In case
know.
you fail. In case it don't work out. Yes, man. She's filling your head full of fear. I pump you full of strength. Because we're on a team, and I know you got what it takes. You're a fucking star, and I know it. That's why I'm here. I'm your cheerleader, honey boy.
I don't need to talk about my fucking dad.
Good take, good take. You did it. You did it. Good job, everybody.
My dad's not the reason I drink. He's the reason I work.
I'm getting them.
Come here. Come here. Child labor laws!
You have good instincts.
I have good instincts?
Yeah, you
I got
have
rodeo
good
clown
instincts.
instincts, so I could never make it in Hollywood.
You could if you started when I did.
How do you think it feels to have my son paying me? How do you think that feels?
You wouldn't be here if I didn't pay you.
The movie looks interesting. I knew about the movie beforehand. I knew that LaBeouf was working on a movie about his own life and about him playing his own father. And I know that the film premiered at some film festivals. I think it premiered at Sundance, or at least that's where I kind of first saw the reactions to it. And a lot of the reactions were really, really good. A lot of people were saying this is a good return of Shia LaBeouf. So it should be interesting to see how people react to this, and how people react to him. Obviously, LaBeouf has had a very storied career, put it that way, of sometimes working against himself. But this looks rather interesting, to say the least. To say the very least, this looks rather interesting, and it has had a very good word of mouth since its premiere. So this one should probably be on our lists for a lot of things. So Honey Boy opens on November 8th. It may be getting a limited release at that point, and then it will get a wider release. Obviously, I will let you guys know about that. Alright, so let's move on to this week's movie news items. Alright, so the first movie news item we're going to talk about is the sequel to Coming to America has made its cast a little bigger this week. Eddie Murphy will, of course, return to play Prince Akeem, who in the sequel is set to become the king of Zamunda when he discovers that he has a son he never knew about in America, a street-savvy Queens native named Lavelle, who will be played by Jermaine Flower. If you don't know who Jermaine Flower is, he was on the CBS show Superior Donuts. He was also in, I believe, the HBO show, I'm pretty sure it's HBO, called Crashing. So he was in that. Honoring his father's dying wish to groom his long-lost son as the crown prince, Akeem sets off to America with his right-hand man, Samini, once again played by Arsenio Hall. The sequel will bring back James Earl Jones and Paul Bates as the king, of course, Eddie Murphy's Prince Akeem's father, and the servant Oha. This week, Louis Anderson is also set to return. He played Maurice in the first film. He was the employee at McDowell's, the McDonald's knockoff where Prince Akeem worked, of course, to find his new wife. The new members of the cast includes singer Tanaya Taylor, I think that's how you pronounce her name. Comedian Michael Blackson have joined the cast. New members of the cast include singer Tanaya Taylor, comedian Michael Blackson, Leslie Jones, Kiki Lane from If Beale Street Could Talk, Rick Ross, yes, that one, Rick Ross, and surprisingly, Wesley Snipes, which is very interesting. So Kiki Lane will play Akeem's daughter, who, according to reports, is burdened with feeling like she's the son her father never had. There's also conflicting reports that Leslie Jones will play Lavelle's mother, but you can take that as a grain of salt because some reports say they don't know who she's playing, and some reports are saying that she is indeed Lavelle's mother. Snipes is reportedly playing a general who rules the neighboring nation, and then there's some rumors about where that potentially could go. So there is that. Craig Brewer is directing the sequel, with production set to start later this month. For Coming to America will open on December 18th of next year. Not this year, next year. I just find I don't know. It's been quite a while since I've actually watched Coming to America. I don't remember too much about it. I remember him working at the knockoff McDonald's with Louis Anderson. I just don't remember too much about it. I guess I had to go back and rewatch it, to be honest with you. So let's just move on. Taika Waititi. Earlier this week, it was reported that Taika Waititi would be directing one more movie before he got to work on Marvel's Thor, Love and Thunder, aka Thor 4. At the time of the report, the project was unknown, and the only information we had about the film was that it would be distributed by Fox Searchlight, and it would be produced by Andy Serkis, and reunites Waititi with Garrett Bosch, who was a producer, who worked with Waititi who works with Waititi on the TV series What We Do in the Shadows, which is of course based off the Waititi directed film of the same name. Fast forward to a day later, we now know what the movie will be about. The movie is actually a narrative adaptation of the 2015 documentary Next Goal Wins, which told the story of the Dutch coach Thomas Rogan, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, who attempts the nearly impossible task of turning the American Samoa soccer team from losers into winners, and the journey toward qualifying for the 2014 World Cup. So yes, it is a soccer movie. Again, Waititi will be directing this before he starts prep on Thor, Love and Thunder, which will actually start filming next March. So this movie, this untitled movie so far, we don't know if it will be called Next Goal Wins, but the movie will start filming sometime later this year, obviously before he has to go to work on that. So this is pretty cool. Waititi, if you've never seen anything by Waititi besides Thor Ragnarok, I recommend What We Do in the Shadows, which is very, very good. It's very funny. He also directed The Hunts for Wilder People, which is also very good. That has Sam Neill in it. It also has I forget his last name. I know his first name is Julian Dennison. I think it's Julian Dennison. He was the kid from Deadpool 2. He's in that. He was very good in that. That being Hunt for Wilder People. So yeah, I'd recommend those two movies from him. Of course, Waititi has Jojo Rabbit coming out later this year. The teaser came out last week, which I would have 2 weeks ago, which we actually did talk about. So yeah, there's that. So Waititi getting back in the director game, which is really, really cool. Okay, moving on. There is a segue to this story, but I'm going to save that for the last bit. So we're gonna stick. Well, there's actually kind of two segues, sort of, but we're gonna stick to one. Hey, you notice that? See, this is what happens when you don't pay too much attention to your outline. There is a segue. There are apparently two segues, but there was one segue in particular, but I'm going to save that news item for the next, not this one, but the next one. So this segue is about Marvel. Marvel's next ambitious film is The Eternals, which of course got its proper introduction at Comic-Con last month. The movie is essentially a prequel to the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, as it follows a group of superpowered, human, nearly immortal entities known as the Eternals that were created by the Celestials, which were introduced in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. The cast, of course, will be led by Angelina Jolie. You also got Richard Madden in there, Kumail Nanjiani, Brian Tyree Henry, Salma Hayek's also in there. But reports this week say that the movie is in negotiations and in talks with two different actors, one of which has already appeared in a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie as a different character entirely. So the first one comes from Collider.com, who says that Barry Keoghan, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, from Dunkirk and The Killing of the Sacred Deer, who was also recently in HBO's Chernobyl series, is in negotiations to join, although his role is being kept secret. The second name is Gemma Chan. Now, Gemma Chan was recently in Captain Marvel, where she played Minerva, so it is unclear if she will be reprising her role as Minerva, or if she will be playing a completely different character, which, if she does, will be the first time that the Marvel Cinematic Universe actually does that, at least in terms of film form. Of course, we have Mahershala Ali playing Blade after he played Cottonmouth in the Netflix's series Luke Cage, and of course Alfie Woolard was in Captain America Civil War, and then she played a different character entirely, and also in Luke Cage, ironically enough. So it should be interesting to kind of see if she ends up playing the same character or a different character. She was under heavy makeup in Captain Marvel, and she didn't really have that big of a role, so we'll see what happens with that. If she does end up playing Minerva again, it should be interesting to see how they play that out with that in Captain Marvel and how they connect it with everything. So I don't know, it's interesting. And Gemma Chan, by the way, great. If she's playing two different roles, I mean, whatever. Whatever, let her do it. So Eternals will be coming out in November of next year. They, I believe, start filming relatively soon, so we'll probably hear a little bit more about this as the weeks go by. All right, so let's move on to the other segue from the Taika Waititi story, which is Venom 2. I know what you're thinking. How the hell is that possible? I mean, that is, of course, you don't, read the news as much as I do, or at least the movie news, because reading the regular news is depressing. Venom 2 has officially found its director in the motion capture performance pioneer, Andy Serkis, who of course will be directing the Taika Waititi movie. A few weeks back, luckily we talked about this. A few weeks back, it was reported that Serkis, Rupert Wyatt, and Travis Knight were being looked at to direct Venom 2, but it was clear that Sony Pictures had their sights set on Andy Serkis directing, and now they got him. By the way, Rupert Wyatt directed the Rise of the Planet of the Apes reboot, which of course had Andy Serkis in it, and Travis Knight directed Bumblebee last year. And he also directed Kubo and the Two Strings, and he's also the head of Lanka Studios, which of course does all the stop motion movies like why are none of them popping in my head? Coraline, Kubo and the Two Strings, which he directed, which I really love. If you haven't not seen Kubo and the Two Strings, highly recommend it. Coraline, why am I Paranorman? I don't know why I'm blanking on these movies. Anyway, so there's that. So this will be Serkis's third directorial effort. His directorial debut was the movie Breathe, and of course you can watch his second one on Netflix, which is a Netflix original, which is the Mowgli movie that's out there. I still have not watched that. That's on my queue. We don't know about the plot or story of Venom 2, but it has been rumored that it will revolve around Eddie Brock and Venom potentially fighting Carnage, which of course will be played by Woody Harrelson and his terrible wig. Come on, it's terrible. I mean, I know the joke is old because the movie came out a couple years ago, but it was a bad wig. Anyway, Tom Hardy will return as Eddie Brock and Venom to play Eddie Brock's Venom, as is Michelle Williams. She confirmed the news this week in a nice little surprise. She will be returning as Annie. She confirmed it herself, like I just mentioned, so that's pretty cool. It should be interesting to kind of see how she returns. I mean, they didn't kill her, but they kind of left it off as maybe she won't be around. So it should be interesting to kind of see how she plays around in this little world. Looks like she was more interested in working with Andy Serkis as opposed to actually being a part of Venom 2, but we'll see how that works out. So on top of that, it was reported when the whole looking for a director news came out that Sony, it kind of was implied that Sony wanted to start filming later this year. So we'll have to wait and see about that. They could potentially start working later this year. They're working on the script right now, and apparently Serkis and Tom Hardy are working with the script director, or the script writer, I should say, Kelly Marcel, to work on the script and get that out as soon as possible. It does kind of read like Andy Serkis wants to go a somewhat darker route with Venom, so it should be kind of cool to see that. But I love Andy Serkis. whether he's behind motion capture or not. Andy Serkis, of course, has Gollum. If you need any sort of reference to who Andy Serkis is, first of all, you're not doing yourself any favors with me. But of course, he did the motion capture for Gollum. He did the motion capture for King Kong and the Peter Jackson King Kong movie. He was Ulysses Klaue in Black Panther and Avengers: Age of Ultron. He was what was he? There was a bunch of other stuff. He was. What was he in that? He was in Long Shot, the movie with Charlize Theron and Seth Rogen earlier this year. He played the villain. Essentially the villain in that movie, which I didn't recognize him because he was under like so much makeup, but that was him. And he's just been in a bunch of other stuff that's really cool. I mean, he's not always behind, motion capture, but whenever he actually pops up by himself, like as himself, it's really, really awesome. But it should be interesting to kind of see how this works out with Andy Serkis. I'm really, really looking forward to this. Oddly enough, can't believe I'm saying that I'm looking forward to a Venom 2 movie after. I mean, the first Venom was okay. I'm not gonna sit up here and be like, Venom was complete shit. No, it wasn't. Was it a good movie? Not necessarily, but I'm not gonna rat on and be like, I'm not gonna watch a sequel. No, I'm gonna go watch the sequel. Of course I'm gonna go watch the sequel because that's what I do. I go watch movies. But now with Andy Serkis attached to direct, I think it's really cool. So yeah. Of course, like I mentioned, there's no release date just yet, but if Sony gets their way, they could start filming later this year, and we could see the movie potentially come out next year or the year after. So hopefully it's the year after. Hopefully they don't rush it, because I think that was one of the problems with Venom. I think the fact that Venom was so popular and made a lot of money is what's forcing Sony to be like, no, we got to get this out as soon as possible, and hopefully they don't push Andy Serkis to do that, because I want to, if you're going to make a Venom sequel, make it a proper Venom sequel, and give Andy Serkis all the ammunition he needs. Ammunition was probably a very terrible word to use considering what's been going on, so I apologize for that. So that's it. That's all the movie news that came out this week. Let's move on, of course, to this week's movie releases.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
All right, so first and foremost, there's going to be I believe there's going to be an expansion for The Farewell. I know a few theaters in my area have been there's been a few showtimes popping up, so if there's anything in your area like that, go check out The Farewell. I have not watched it yet, but I'm telling you to go check it out because I hear nothing but good things about it, and I should take my own advice. So there is that. All right, so limited releases this week. We talked about Shia LaBeouf earlier. He actually has a movie coming out this week in a limited release called the Peanut Butter Falcon. It follows Zach, played by Zach Galtsagen, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, who runs away from his care home to make his dream of becoming a wrestler come true. Like I mentioned, the film stars Shia LaBeouf, Dakota Johnson, John Bernthal, John Hawkes, Thomas Hayden Church, Bruce Dern, and actual former wrestlers Mick Foley and Jake the Snake Roberts appear in the film, which I find very, very interesting. And that movie actually looks pretty funny. It looks actually really good. It looks like Shia LaBeouf is kind of playing a guardian to Zach's character. And Zach, the real life Zach Galtsagen actually has Down syndrome and in real life. So this is kind of a really nice little touching story about someone with Down syndrome actually going for his dream, and someone with Down syndrome actually becoming an actor, which I think is really, really cool. So there's that. Another limited release this week. I'm pretty sure it's a limited release, but it's one of those wide, quote-unquote, limited releases where it's playing in enough theaters to be considered a wide release, but not really, because it's still a small little gap. It's Brian Banks, which is based on the true story of football players' dreams of Brian Banks, played by Aldous Hodge, to play in the NFL are halted when he is wrongly convicted and sent to prison. Years later, he fights to clear his name within an unjust system. The film also co-stars Sherry Shepherd, who plays his mother, and Greg Kinnear, who plays his lawyer. So those are your limited releases. Your wide releases this week, we have quite a variety. The first one is The Art of Racing in the Rain. It's based off a novel by Garth Stein. A dog named Enzo, voiced by Kevin Costner, recalls the life lessons he has learned from his race car driving owner, Denny, played by Vilo Ventimiglia. I always mispronounce the last name. The movie also co-stars Amanda Seyfried, Gary Cole, and Kathy Baker. I'm not very interested in this movie at all. But if that's your thing, that's your thing. I'm not opposed to dog movies. I know it's like, oh, you're just opposed to dog movies. No, I'm not opposed to dog movies. It just doesn't look that interesting to me. Don't judge me. So, and there's other stuff I want to watch this weekend. So the next movie is Dora and the Lost City of Gold, based off, of course, the popular children's animated series Dora, played by Isabella Moner in the movie. A teenager explorer leads her friends on an adventure to save her parents and solve the mystery behind the lost city of gold. The movie co-stars Eugenio Derbez, Jeffrey Wahlberg, Michael Pena, Eva Longoria, and the voices of Danny Trejo as Boots. Yes, Danny Trejo, local hero who saved those people from a flipped over car this week, and Benicio del Toro as Swiper. Yes, Benicio del Toro is voicing Swiper. That's probably more ridiculous than the fact that Danny Trejo is voicing Boots, but whatever. The next movie is The Kitchen, based off the comic book series of the same name. The wives of New York gangsters in Hell's Kitchen in the 70s continued to operate their husbands' rackets after they've been locked up in prison. The Kitchen stars Melissa McCarthy, Elizabeth Moss, Tiffany Haddish, Common, Domhnall Gleeson, James Badgedale, and Margot Martindale. So this is a comic book series I knew nothing about, and then they were like, oh, we're making this movie with Melissa McCarthy, Elizabeth Moss, and Tiffany Haddish, of all people, and you're like, what? And then you watch the trailer and you're like, no, I buy it. Yeah, I buy all these three ladies in this movie. The Kitchen has been getting some mixed reviews from some people that I know online, so I'll take that. I mean, I'm still gonna go watch it. You know, just hopefully it's good. Hopefully it's at least decent. That's all I wish for. Hopefully it's at least decent. All right. And finally, the movie that I've been looking forward to for a long time, and a lot of other people have as well, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Based, of course, off the acclaimed novel series, a group of teens face their own fears in order to save their lives. Directed by Andre Overdell, who directed Troll Hunter and The Autopsy of Jane Doe, which, if you've not seen any of those movies, especially The Autopsy of Jane Doe, I highly recommend you do that right away, because it's very damn good. And produced by Guillermo del Toro, who also had a hand in writing the story for the movie. He was originally going to direct the movie, but he passed on that because he got so busy with other stuff. I've been looking forward to this for a while. I read some of the book. I didn't read I think I only read certain stories. I never read the whole series of books. I know there's other series, there's Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and then there's even more Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, so I only read the first book, but I'm totally down for this. I've been looking forward to this since it was announced. Since it was announced when Del Toro was attached. And then when he left the project, I was a little bummed out. But then I heard that Andre Overdell had been attached. And at that point, I had already seen Troll Hunter and I had already seen The Autopsy of Jane Doe. And I was super stoked because The Autopsy of Jane Doe was one of my favorite standouts I think it was like when it came out 2 years ago, something like that, maybe 3. But I was really looking forward to it. And then I saw the trailers and everything just looked really good. And everything that's been coming out so far from reviews and early thoughts, all of them are saying that it's pretty good, that it works. Obviously, there's people saying that it works, but there are some stumbles. But that could be said for any movie. But I'm so happy that people are actually liking this, because that just makes me even more pumped to go watch it. So I bought my tickets already, and I'm gonna be hopefully creeped out. I'm already creeped out a little bit by some of the stuff I watch, but some of the stuff I've seen anyway. So hopefully it continues for the movie. So that's it. Those are your wide releases of the week: Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, The Kitchen, Dora and the Lost City of Gold, The Art of Racing in the Rain. Your limited releases this week are Brian Banks and the Peanut Butter Falcon. Can't say that fast enough. So yeah, that's it, guys. That's all the movie news I got for you guys this week. That's all the trailers I got for you this week. And those are all the movies coming out in theaters this weekend for all your viewing pleasures. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast this week. If you're listening on YouTube, be sure to click that subscribe button, hit that like button, and let me know what you thought of the podcast down below in the comment section. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, please leave me a review, subscribe, leave me a rating. yeah, leave me a rating and a review. It really helps with the podcast in the long run, and helps me know that you guys appreciate it, or at least lets me know that you guys are liking or maybe not liking what you're hearing on the podcast. So that's it. That's all I got for you guys this week. Thank you guys so much. Of course, in the description/show notes area, there are links to all this other stuff from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, stuff like that. WordPress, where I do my written reviews. I'll probably do a written review of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark this week. I'm not gonna make any promises since I got some stuff going on this week. This weekend is actually my 10-year high school reunion, which is really making me feel older than I really am, and two, kind of nervous and excited at the same time. So I got that going on this weekend. So I don't know if there will be a review this weekend, but either way, that's up there, so you guys can go check out some stuff. I got a written review of Hobbs and Shaw up there. I know I didn't talk about it on the podcast. I really liked it. I enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Is it just over the top? Yeah, it is. But that's what the franchise is, so get over it. But yeah, that's it. That's all I got for you guys this week. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. Like I mentioned, next week there may or may not be a podcast. If there is, it will be coming out a lot sooner in the week than opposed to later in the week. But yeah, that's it. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast this week. Be safe out there. I know it is very troubling, everything that's been going on in the news lately, and obviously we have to fight for change, but it doesn't mean that we should completely live our lives in fear. We have to show that we are stronger than the people who try to do something to make themselves famous, or to hurt other people intentionally, or to prove a point to other people. And yeah, I don't know what more I can say that hasn't already been said or can be said stronger and more effective than others. But just be safe out there. Try to enjoy yourselves. Have a good time. Be good people all the way around to anyone you see. And go, of course, as I always like to end. I wasn't going to end the podcast this week with this, but I'm going to do it because that's what I usually do, and we should continue to do the things we do without any fear of anything. I know this is a very lonely podcast that I record in a small room in my home, but it's a crappy world out there, and movies are a good form of escapism for that said crappy world. So I guess it's more important that I say it this week, now that I've talked myself into it. So be safe, have fun, be good people, and go watch some movies.
Whoop whoop! Yeah! Give it up! Movie!